Hey everyone, welcome to Pageant Professors. I'm Nicole and this is Prita, and today we're talking about USA state evening gown trends. You know, with Miss USA 2012, just a couple weeks from us right now.
God, I can't believe it's a couple weeks.
I know, time is like absolutely flying. So, you know, we'd love to just look back at the state pageants and see what we saw. And cutouts, we're just going to start with cutouts because
it's been a huge thing this year.
It's been a huge thing, and not even in just Miss, but with teen too.
Oh yeah.
With teen too, and that was so surprising to me.
Well, the best thing I think that we've seen about the trends is that we've seen the cutout trend for Miss and we've seen it for teen, but they don't look the same, which I really appreciate. The way that a teen cutout dress has appeared on stage has obviously been much more toned down, not as sexy as what we've seen on the Miss USA or the Miss State pageant stages.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got to give it to Alexandra Platz, who we talked to recently, and she looked beautiful in her purple satin cutout gown for teen. And, you know, I wasn't sure what I thought about it at first because I was like, you know what, cutouts, we've always just said, you know, avoid it, it's a Miss thing, leave it behind. But, you know, as an older teen contestant, it just worked for her, and it really showed off the level of confidence that she had on stage.
What I also really like, I know we're talking about Miss USA state trends, but we even saw it on the national stage this year with Jennifer Sedler at Miss America. She was Miss Arizona, and she had this great gown, but it was like an illusion cutout gown, where it basically was a very sparkly gown, but in certain areas on the gown, there was just like a mesh.
Yeah, it was like a sheer panel.
Right, so it wasn't a complete cutout. There wasn't too much exposed skin, but in a couple of places, it was just enough to kind of pique the interest, make it very classy but sexy at the same time, which I think is such an important element. When you see Miss gowns or even the teen gowns, the cutouts, they can be risky. They can leave very, very little to the imagination depending on the gown, and I think what we've seen this year that's been really great has been a classier variation on that.
And I love it because, you know, I don't think I would be comfortable, no matter how great in shape I was, to wear a cutout gown. But, you know, Jennifer, when I saw that gown with, it was the white gown or the cream gown with the sheer paneling on the side and along the leg, I just thought, wow, that is a really classy way to still be on trend.
Right, exactly. I mean, it just really, like I said, it was showcasing the parts. I mean, this is the big thing with cutouts that we said in Evening Gown 101, and we'll say it again. You have to make sure that you're accentuating the parts that you want to accentuate and kind of not hiding, but not bringing too much attention to the parts that you don't. And so Jennifer's gown did fantastic about, she wanted, it was, you know, one was along her waistline. She has that great sexy curve, but without putting it all out there, she still was able to highlight. And the shape of the cutout too is so important because it was a curve. If it was a straight line cutout, it would, I feel like, make her look more straight.
Yeah,
it would take away from her curves rather than having a curve cutout enhances
accentuate. Absolutely. Can we talk about my favorite gown real quick? It is one shoulder, shocking. I know, it's shocking. But it was lace, and I loved seeing lace on the pageant stage this year. And you know, it kind of came up maybe last year or in years past as just kind of, you know, an element of a really beautiful gown. But this year it was like front and center. We saw it at Texas, we saw it at Iowa, DC, and that was my favorite gown. Rebecca Hodge, Miss Iowa USA 2012, wore this beautiful champagne lace one shoulder Tarani gown, and it was stunning. And it's, you know, one of the gowns that I'm looking at for Miss International because I just love it so much, and it just is so impactful on stage.
Well, the great thing about lace, I mean, we always talk about how trends can be sometimes a little difficult, and they can polarize a judging panel, maybe with someone really liking it, really not, but I feel like lace is subtle enough and classy enough because you see lace a lot on bridal gowns, you see them, that it's not something that draws too much attention and definitely doesn't draw negative attention most of the time because it is so subtle, it's very classy, it's very chic, and it's just a way to find a gown that's gorgeous but just a little bit different. And again, I'm throwing it back to Miss America again. This year's winner, Miss America 2012, Laura Kepler, also wore a gown with lace. It was I think she said herself, based on the style of Kate Middleton's wedding gown.
Sure.
But it was a black gown. All of it was solid, but at the top half and over the shoulders, there was lace.
It was so stunning and classic. And again, I think people shy away from lace, especially in pageants, because it does tend to look bridal.
Right.
And I think the way to, steer away from that is to do it in a black.
Yep.
Or do it in a champagne, something that you wouldn't see at a wedding.
Right, exactly. I feel that's a really good point, because if you're getting into lace in the white gowns, then it can tend to come across as very, very bridal. But we've seen it on the teen stage in turquoise, in pink, in ways that you don't typically see it. But again, it just adds this different element, and depending on the positioning or how it's done, it can go from just a little hint of this trend to taking it over with a full-on lace gown.
Yeah, exactly. And I think accessories are really key here, or some accessories to avoid, because if you go with, the delicate pearl necklace or even pearl earrings, that's when you really go into the bridal category, and you want to avoid that because it is a pageant. So, rhinestones are great.
Bring your rhinestones.
Rhinestones are great.
Right.
Go for it.
And they're a great way to set off how sometimes when you think of lace, you think of conservative, you think of bridal.
Right.
It's not always considered sexy or overtly sexy. So when you pair it with pearls, it can come across as a little too subtle. So if you take that lace gown, offset it with great rhinestone earrings, or depending on the cut, a great rhinestone necklace that really just blings it up.
Yeah.
I think that's a fantastic way to combine the trend with something that is very pageant.
Definitely. Well, I think that kind of is a good transition into our next trend, which is slits. Brittany Booker did the lace dress, and she had a high slit. Texas, USA, 2012. I mean, she's in it because that gown was beautiful. And the high slit, again, confidence. You can't rock a high slit unless you are body confident, for sure.
Oh, yeah. But slits are a great way. I mean, slits can come from, you can have side slits, you can have front slits, but really, depending on your system, I think you had the tagline, the sky's the limit when it comes to these things. As long as it's tastefully done, I think you can have a slit that goes extremely high because it shows your legs. If the rest of your gown, I wouldn't do a really high slit with like a cutout gown.
Yeah.
But if you have a more conservative gown on top that doesn't have a ton going on, it's not revealing a lot, having a really high slit is this like peak of sexiness and skin that just really can set a gown apart from all the others.
Yeah, well, I think that's the important thing, is to, just pick one or two trends that you're going to go for, and then really keep the rest of your look a lot more simpler. Because, if you want to go for the high slit, you want to make your legs the star of the show. You don't want to over accessorize. You don't want to throw in the cutouts with the lace and the high slit. You want to pick one or two and go for it.
Right. No, I agree. And high slits are so much fun because you can't really do them anywhere else.
Yeah.
A slit that high on stage looks fantastic. But we also talk about this in our Evening Gown 101 video. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you go look. But one of the great things about high slits and the things to keep in mind is it also depends on the pageant and the stage.
Yeah.
If you don't have a lot of room to walk or move, the high slit might not be great, because when the high slit really takes front and center is when you're able to do the sexy strut where you get to have the leg out.
Yeah.
It's when you're walking that it comes out and it peaks, or when you're able to hit that stand, that pose, and have it showcase your leg. But if you're having to constantly, you don't have a lot of room, or if you're just standing a lot on stage, you don't always have the opportunity to show off the leg.
Yeah.
So make sure if you're getting a high slit that you have room enough on the stage to work it.
Yeah. Well, you are wearing one of the hottest colors that we saw in both teen and miss categories, and that's red.
Yes.
I love it. The teen competitors and the misses looked stunning. I mean, it is such a sophisticated color, and it also can be very feminine and very girly. Our two of our favorite title holders
from the same state
are in Louisiana, and Erin and Marley, they both wore red gowns, and they were very similar in the cut. They were off the shoulder, but one was very distinctly miss, and the other was very distinctly teen, which is so key.
It is. I mean, the great thing about the teen gown was the way the rhinestones were done. It was a mix of red stones and white stones, but there was even almost some pink stones,
which I love.
Which set it off, but made it a little more youthful.
Obviously.
The pink. But the bottom was tulle, and I have to say that I actually saw that gown in a couple of Miss competitions last year, and it's a beautiful gown, but I remember in those instances where I did see it thinking, I kind of think that gown looks a little teen.
Yeah.
And when we saw it on the teen stage, I mean, it was perfect.
It was perfect.
Great color. Red can sometimes be too sexy or too stark for a teen, especially when we talk about, usually with teen, you go with more subtle colors or more youthful colors. Red is certainly not something that usually screams youthful, but the way it was done in this gown was perfect.
It was perfect. It had the chiffon, which is always like really delicate and super feminine. And then when we were talking about the Miss, it had a little more satin to it. The rhinestones were silver, they weren't pink. And it was spot on, and I loved it.
Yeah, no, with the Miss gown too, what was fantastic was the fit.
Yeah.
The fit on the top, it was off the shoulder, but it came down. There was a brooch in the middle that really, I think, accentuated her bust line because, again, it's all about creating emphasis where you want. And as a Miss contestant, accentuating your bust is fantastic.
Right.
You've got a great body, great curves, show it off. But with the teen, it was, very blinged out at the top, but the bottom was all tulle. But it hugged her body, but not in a way that was too form-fitting or too sexy. Whereas the Miss had a very fitted gown on the top that really just showed off her body.
So, talking about off-the-shoulder gowns, it is a beautiful trend. I wish I was a little taller so that I could pull it off on the evening gown stage, because I think that when you are a shorter contestant or a more petite contestant, the off-the-shoulder can make you look a little more shorter than you are, because it does give that, it kind of cuts off your silhouette.
Yeah. No, I totally go. The only thing I will say is, because we're around the same height, I love off-the-shoulder things only because I have a very long neck. And I find that there's a way to wear an off-the-shoulder where it accentuates your neck, it accentuates your collarbone. If you have a very thin neckline, thin shoulders, it's able to accentuate that a little more, and almost, I find that it elongates me a tiny bit.
Really?
But my other trick though is if I'm wearing an off-the-shoulder, I always put highlighter, whether it's a stick highlighter or a powder, on my collarbones. You put them on your collarbones all the way out, it draws attention, the light goes there, and it just makes me feel, and in pictures so far, look. Because you stand, when you're off the shoulders, your shoulders are back a little more, you're trying to focus on your posture a little more, because that's the big thing in an off-the-shoulder dress, you have to focus on your posture.
Yeah, definitely.
But I really do like it, but it's a balance.
It is a balance, definitely a balance.
As with everything, try it on, take pictures, and see what you think. But off-the-shoulder gowns I think are just so beautiful. And we've seen them everywhere this year.
We have seen them everywhere. And we saw a preview of it last year, and I think that's why it was so popular, because we did see it at Miss USA last year. So, I'm really excited to see, what we're going to be seeing on stage at Miss USA, at Miss Teen USA this year.
They're going to bring it.
I think this is a good preview. I think this is a good preview. So, who knows what we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if a lot of the state trends carry over to Miss USA, because sometimes it's a chicken, is it the chicken or the egg debate, because a lot of times the top 10 or the outstanding gowns at Miss USA set the trend for the state pageants over the year, but sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes there's some great stuff going on at the state level that these title holders carry over until the national stage. So it'll be great to see what comes forward and what takes the step back a little bit.
I know. Well, everyone that we've interviewed so far has been very hush-hush about their picks and their colors. So, while we've met a lot of the girls before their competition, they've been very lock and key about their dresses for nationals.
But it sounds like they're bringing it. I know that Robin with La Casa Hermosa is working with a lot of at least the East Coast title holders. I'm sure she's got clients all over the country, but she's been creating some gorgeous pieces, and so I cannot wait to see some of her gowns on the stage too.
Sure.
It's going to be amazing.
I know, I can't wait. So that's a little what we've seen for evening gown trends this year, both in Miss and Teen USA. So we're excited to see what the national stage is going to bring this year.
Yeah, check out the site. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments below. Have been some trends that maybe we didn't mention that you loved, or tell us what you think about the trends we did talk about. Love them, leave them, let us know.
Did you know that there are some really common mistakes that girls make during the evening gown portion of their competition? Click on the link in the description below and you'll be taken to our website for a free 30-minute long training course. By the end of it, you'll learn how to avoid these common mistakes and master the evening gown portion of your competition today.